Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about ICP because ICP is one of those things where I think it's much broader and it goes much deeper than most people really realize. And I think this is understandable just given the I would say generally limited scope of most layer ones within crypto. So because of this, there's like people don't really get all of the things that ICP can do. And so today I wanted to go over the top 4 most unexpected things that you can do on the ICP network, just because most people don't really realize what it's truly capable of and all the crazy different things that you can do. So anyway, let's go on ahead and dive right in. Starting out, I want to take a quick look at the crypto bubbles just because we can see a pretty nice bounce in the market today. ICP only up about 3.5%, but we are seeing AI agents specifically doing quite well. Caspa, Lido, and Radium, also 3 others that are doing really quite well in this market also. If we do look at the ICP chart, we can see that we did drop a little bit below what was looking like this kind of $10 support. We have come back up and kind of bounced back into this $10 support range. So far it looks like the support is holding. Obviously we'll kind of see how this goes over the next several days, just because we do have a couple precarious situations, I would say, coming up with some of the inflation data and CPI and PPI and all this type of stuff. Crypto is sitting in a somewhat precarious spot because a lot of projects are sitting on key support ranges. We could potentially be getting some bad news out of that, and if we do, then I think we see a lot of these altcoins probably lose some pretty key support levels. So if you are interested in trading ICP or Ethereum, Bitcoin, anything for that matter, feel free to use my link in the description below for BTCC. You do get the 10% bonus on first time deposits, which is a really good deal. Also extra bonuses up to $10,055 per user. So BTCC is throwing you basically a bunch of money to trade with them, which is really good to see. Really great offer if you are looking for a new place to trade. Like I said, if you're looking for a new place, you might as well get extra bonuses and money and whatnot for doing so. They've been around for 13 years, so not too much of a risk of them being like a here today, gone tomorrow type of exchange. Also 300 plus crypto futures, so they've got a ton of things to trade, and if it's something that you're wanting to trade, they probably have it. Also up to 500x leverage. Again, I would discourage you using this level of leverage, but again, if you have some strategy that works, then good for you. Also no VPN or KYC necessary, so if that is something that's important to you, then they also have that as well. So now, given that we are going to be a little bit of a more lengthy video today, just going in on all the different things that ICP can do, I want to jump right on into it. Now that we've kind of seen where the market's at, obviously ICP is looking pretty good. I want to go over the 4 most unexpected things that you can do on ICP. I think a lot of what people don't really quite grasp about ICP is just how expansive and broad that it is. And so if we look here, the first thing that you can do on ICP is use it as like decentralized data storage. They do have an ICP pricing calculator, which is kind of nice. This actually looks new from when I was looking into ICP last, because previously it seemed like it was very difficult to understand what exactly is happening on ICP, or like what the true cost was, a lot of that type of stuff. And so they have this calculator here, which I think is really cool. You can see here I'm looking at 100 gigabytes, but you can go down and do a lot less. What you can see is it's about $6 to hold about 1 gigabyte of data for a year on a 13 node subnet, including a canister. So just under $6, not too bad. It is still pretty expensive, I would say. This is something that we're holding terabytes or petabytes or whatever of data on ICPs, going projects and companies and all this type of stuff using AWS and Azure, and even though they are more centralized and definitely not like decentralized at all, it's so much cheaper. And so I think it's just kind of one of those things that we'll just probably see over time. But if we continue to see essentially like some tech advancements, then we can see some of these mass data companies potentially transitioning over to ICP. However, for us as like user and essentially like if you're only creating or you're leaving like actions on chain, things like that, you can get away with some pretty small amounts of data on chain overall. So I think that is pretty good. Again, remember, this is like actively being used at all times. And so what we can see is, if we were to move this into longer term storage, it is a little bit cheaper, but this is more essentially like holding a gigabyte of data actively on chain, maybe not something where you're putting in like long-term storage that you're not going to be using. And so overall, storage on ICP is still a really great option. Again, I do think there's some potential, price and tech improvements that we can see here. But overall, things looking really nice. Also, if you do want to check out this calculator, and like let's say you're a dev and you have a whole bunch of different things that you are wanting to potentially do. I did want to move on to the second one though. What we can see is decentralized and online digital ID, which is really cool. Obviously, there's a lot of places in the world that do not have digital ID yet, and ICP is doing something really interesting with decentralized and digital ID. I think this is something that, potentially, maybe not for certain countries with very, very strong political systems. Think about like the US or maybe even like Western Europe, things like that. But even other countries that are, maybe in the developing world where they don't want to deal with all the like bureaucratic nonsense of setting up and managing and tracking and doing all this type of stuff with ID, they could essentially just move that on chain. And I think that would be a really cool benefit, because it's going to be beneficial for people as well, because they can find their identity on chain. It can be proven. There's a lot of this different type of stuff. And so this is something where there's a whole bunch of different projects working on doing decentralized ID on chain. And so this is what I think you'll start to see as we kind of continue, if you're not seeing it already with ICP, is we've just gone from talking about data storage. And again, this is like, there's Filecoin, there's a whole bunch of different like other things that are trying to do data storage. We can see we're now to decentralized ID. There's a whole bunch of different projects trying to do decentralized ID as well. So again, another crazy thing that ICP is working on. If we go to the third one, we can also see here that they're talking about AI models and running entire AI models on chain, basically as smart contracts. So this is something that's interesting too, because this is truly decentralized AI. Right now, a lot of the AI data is held within centralized sources. It's not even really obtained in like a decentralized way. A lot of this is like essentially held by like big tech and big data, a lot of that type of stuff. I don't really think there's a whole lot that we can do about that right now, but it's essentially about building out an infrastructure for the future of how do we get more, how do we provision it, how do we permission it, do we steal it from people like we're doing currently, do we actually try and pay people for their data, a lot of that type of stuff. Is what we can see is ICP is actually coming out with kind of a framework and an infrastructure to deal with this type of stuff, which is really cool. We can see they've got online or like on-chain facial recognition, which is pretty cool. We know they're talking about caffeine AI and essentially like using like text to speech or like natural language processing to like build applications on chain. That's obviously another version and a really interesting version of AI. There's a whole bunch of different like stuff that you can do with AI on ICP. And so again, this is equivalent to like a BitTensor or a Fetch or anything like that. There's a whole bunch of projects trying to solve this problem. And the other thing that's interesting, I don't know that the unit economics necessarily work out for this right now, but the other thing that's interesting is because they have storage on chain as well, there's a world in which you could have, like the AI data sitting on chain and being pulled in by different models. Like it essentially provides like a ground level framework for all of these things to interact, which again, really, really interesting there. I'm not quite sure that like the unit economics work out just based on like pricing and things that we've seen, but it is potentially an option and maybe could be used in more like limited use cases, which would be really interesting. Now, moving on to the fourth and final option, this is kind of like the largest items here for ICP is essentially kind of like a new paradigm of how to build the internet, right? One thing we can see here is DeFi. ICP allows for on-chain swaps. As we could see on Crypto Bubbles, we talked about this in various videos in the past. We didn't really highlight on it today, but Hyperliquid is essentially like going super crazy lately because they can do on-chain. Like it's essentially like an on-chain L1, right? ICP can do that, right? So there's a lot of things where we can see some hype and things building within. Obviously, AI has been huge too. ICP could do that too. So there's a lot of like ICP is in the right spaces. And I don't think a lot of people really realize that ICP can do not just one of these things, but kind of like all of these things together. And so, really, really interesting there. In addition to that, we can see, community owned Web3, like with DAOs and stuff, we don't have to rely on them being on like Azure or AWS or things like that. They can actually be like fully on chain and owned on chain, which is cool. Again, you can essentially like extend web software or Web 2 software, because they essentially can work with like HTTP and HTTPS calls, which a lot of crypto can't really like handle super well. So that's another like really interesting thing. And finally, ICP does essentially have like the throughput and the capacity to also handle gaming too. So there's a lot of really different things that ICP can do on chain, and all of these kind of coming together are really, really interesting, and I think make a really powerful ecosystem. Now, obviously, I think there's a lot of people who don't really realize that ICP can do all of this and really quite well all together. And so that's why I want to make this video today, discussing 4 of the most unexpected things that you can do on ICP. Again, if you're an ICP super fan, probably none of these things are particularly unexpected to you. But if you're somebody who's just finding ICP and trying to learn about the Internet Computer Protocol, then this is probably like there's probably something in here that you maybe didn't really realize or know. One thing I will say is if you do just want to go to internetcomputer.org, you can essentially like learn about all of the different things. It's a pretty expansive website. Also in the top right corner, I'll actually share my screen again. So you can see in this top right corner here, you can see this little brain thing. They actually have like built-in AI here. So you can see, you know, I typed in digital ID. It gave me a quick response about it, and then also gave you some links here to talk about, you know, how Internet Computer is working with digital ID. So a really, really helpful website. If you are wanting to learn more about ICP and what they can do, all that type of stuff, I direct you there because it's a really, really good place to take a look. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe because it really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.